make sure I project so everyone can hear me.
Project over that talking machine.
I haven't done a couple of slides in a while, so I got a little bit carried away with the animations, the way the words fly in. It was a bit addictive, so
It is addictive.
apologies in advance. And I haven't used the clicker for a long time either. A little bit on me. I'm originally from Hobart, Tasmania. If you've got a new Tasmanian joke, I'd love to hear it. I've heard most of them, so if you've got a new one.
Favourite?
Try it on. Oh, the scar is obviously the big one. Yeah. 10 plus years now in digital consulting, New South Wales, where I have lived for a long time, Queensland for the last 4 years, which I love. It's now home. I raise my kids here in Brisbane. I'm involved in 2 businesses, as mentioned. Digital Business Partners is my main business, and a side business which I'm heavily invested in is Career Development Centre, which is mental health, careers, corporate training. So very, very different, but both keep you very busy, which is great. And the 2 podcasts. So the first one you mentioned, the Influencers and Entrepreneurs podcast. I was thinking of new ways I can get out and speak to basically influencers and entrepreneurs, the people I want to do business with. And sometimes the best way is to create something a little bit left of field and get a way to chat with these people. And that was the reason for creating that podcast. That actually really sparked my interest in podcasting. I fell in love with the process and how you could do it and how easy it is to speak to people you admire. So with the Careers Mental Health Conversations podcast, that was an idea to basically get some branding out there for our Career Development Centre as a new business. And that has been the most successful podcast to date with nearly 5,000 downloads in 9 months. So it's quite niche, but that's what works for it. And I'll run through that in a bit more detail. And I do coach multiple business owners on how to start podcasts. I've helped in insurance, sports, legal as well. So it's quite rewarding. And once you sort of set people up with the right tools and strategies, it's over to them. It really is quite simple. All right, so I assume everyone's heard of what a podcast is, or you might not have listened to it, but the technical term for a podcast is a digital audio file made available on the internet, downloading to a computer or mobile device, typically as a series, installment, which can be received by subscribers automatically. If you're an Apple iPhone user, you might see that little logo on your phone. Google Podcasts, that's a really new podcast platform for Android users, and that's growing. That's designed to take on the Apple market. Spotify is really, really big. They launched about 2 years ago on podcasts, and now they're the second most used platform in the world for podcasts. So anyone who's on Spotify, you can now stream podcasts directly through there as well. And of course, Apple has the lion's share of podcasts. They basically, I wouldn't say they invented it, but they certainly were the first to have created an easy to use platform where you can stream. So they've probably got, I'd say, about 70-80% of the market at this stage. Spotify and Google are now really trying to catch up and capitalise on that market. And popularity is rising significantly. These are US statistics, but 51% of US have listened to a podcast in the last 30 days. And as you can see, from 2006, actually they were invented in 2004, but 2006 upwards to 2019, it's been a significant rise. So over half the population now have listened to a podcast in the last 30 days. So it's a pretty big deal. Where are people consuming podcasts? At home is the main point. So 49%. So it's really, really simple, obviously, to have your phone on. You might stream it through your laptop. I'd say phone's probably the main way that you listen to a podcast. In your car or truck, you're commuting. Obviously, we all get stuck in traffic. People are switching off from commercial radio onto a podcast. At work, good or bad, depending on your work. While you're working out, walking around, as I say to my clients, you can listen in your home, your car, public transport, at work, in the gym, walking the dog, or even on the toilet. You can listen to podcast wherever you want. And the best thing about a podcast is you can take your message anywhere. Wherever your end consumer is, as long as they've got a phone, which most of us carry on these days, you can consume that content. And Australia, we love a podcast here as well. So per capita, we're 4th globally for consuming podcasts, which is fantastic. And 1 in 3 Australians listen to a podcast regularly. So it's a really big deal. This is the number one question. So we all probably listen to it and wonder, oh, that's pretty cool, but I'm not tech savvy. Are they hard to make? And I'm here to tell you it's really, really, really simple. Anyone can start a podcast with the right gear. Once you've got the right gear, it's really straightforward. Effectively, the most important thing is you need a quiet room. You don't want to be podcasting in a loud environment. You want to be podcasting in a really, really quiet room where it's nice and silent and the audio is crisp. If the audio is crisp, it makes your job for getting that podcast onto Apple iTunes or Google or Spotify really easy because you don't have to do much editing. 1 or 2 microphones. A lot of people will just solo podcasts, you know, they've just got ideas and they want to just project their ideas and thoughts and to their audience, and that's great. Or you can have a guest and you can have, you know, 2, 3, 4 microphones. Most people start with 1 or 2 microphones, and I do recommend getting guests on your show. These days, there's something called the Zoom H6. If you've ever been or heard of Tim's podcast, and this is what him and I use, it's a little portable recorder. They're about $500-600. They're coming down in price. You can take that anywhere and plug microphones in. They just run off batteries. Really, really straightforward to use. Looks like there's a lot of buttons on there. The reality is you need 2 buttons, and that's it. Or you can put a microphone directly into your laptop and just press record through some software. So as long as you've got a microphone or a recorder or a microphone and a laptop, you can record a podcast, guys. It's not that hard. If you've already got the laptop and you just get a microphone, you're looking about $250 to start off. The software is all free with podcasts. You don't need to subscribe to subscriptions and pay setup costs for all that sort of stuff. It's actually all iTunes and everything like that, it's free. Or if you want to get the portable recorder and a couple of microphones, you're probably looking at $1,000 tops, front end costs, and after that, there's nothing else to it. It's no ongoing costs at all. So why should you start a podcast? That's probably why we're all here, to find out a little bit more. Well, I think it gives you and your business a really unique identity and voice. In a business world where there's so many people all sort of doing the same thing, how do you get to stand out from the crowd? How do you give yourself a point of difference? More importantly, how do you give your thoughts to people in a completely different way? Because if you look at a website, right, and here's my industry, digital marketing, we all say the same thing. We all think we're the best at what we do. We get results for our clients. We've got the best service. Everyone's saying the same thing. How do you give your brand something a little bit left of field? And I think the podcast is one of the best ways to do it because you shine through on a podcast. It's all you. It's your identity. It's your brand. It's your thoughts. It's your opinions. People can make a judgment on you. The reality is you're not going to reach everyone that you want to anyway. But with a podcast, they can decide if they want to listen to you, if they subscribe to your thoughts, your thinking, and that's great. As one client told me, it gives your listeners a peek behind the curtains. So you get to open up a little bit about you, your business, what you do. It's a little bit different to just putting out a website or social media where we're all projecting a really similar image and similar concept. People get to see the real you. There's not much hiding with a podcast because, you know, you're the one talking, you're the one sharing your thoughts, you're the one deep diving into a guest. So, a bit of a screen freeze there. Just going to reload. We're all refueled. There we go. Yeah, so I think I was talking about it gives you a real point of difference. Listeners get a peek behind the curtains of your business, which I think is really important. They get to see the real you, and I think you get to highlight guest stories. So, you know, podcasts are fun. You get to learn stuff about people that you thought you knew, and then you sort of get them on a podcast and they start sharing all this different stuff. I was interviewing a guy just last week, or 2 weeks ago, for my Careers podcast, and it was all about fitness and the mental health required for fitness. and he was talking about he does 56k ultra marathons, and he's a bit of a fitness guy. Anyway, we started going down this path where he's grew up in foster homes, and he moved around, and like it just went a whole different direction that I didn't even anticipate, and it was really interesting. And I didn't want to get off, we were talking for an hour, and I could have gone for 2, but. And you get to highlight your own industry, which I think is really cool. So, how you structure your podcast is up to you. But I think all of us here, whether we're in business broking, legal, accounting, property, you want to highlight your own industry, right? And that's really fun. Everyone likes to talk about their own industry. And then you get to talk about the businesses involved and give your take. Is it about the economy? Is it about the politicians? You can put a spin on it, but giving your opinion on your industry, I think, is quite powerful. And similar to that, you get to relay some pretty important messages, give your point of view on something, which is the most empowering part of the podcast, is you get to give a point of view, and people can choose where they want to listen, but I think it's really important to have your say on things. And I think I've made this point, but you need to stand out from the crowd, and a podcast, it really does that. And it's with video, which does the same thing. A lot of people get nervous with a video because you've got to sit the right way, the lighting's got to be right. What if I stuff up my lines? Oh, the microphone's not going to work properly. There's so much with a video which makes us nervous, and sometimes we're not ourselves. But you get in a quiet room with a microphone, and just you and a guest, you'd be surprised. Some people come to life. Some people you've got to really coax them, feel like giving them 3 coffees. But other people just start shooting from the hip straight away, and it gets really fun. And it's a really unique cold call, okay? So you're looking for a guest, and you think, oh, I really want that person on my podcast, but I want to do some business with them as well. What if I give them a call and ask them to be on my podcast, and that way you can set up a really strong relationship for future business. I've actually made a lot of business out of getting people on podcasts because there's a bond with podcasting that only you and that person share, and it's really unique. And it's going to make sure that you're memorable as well. So it's a unique cold call. If you're struggling to get through to someone that you admire, you want to do business with, you think will never take your call, you'd be surprised how many people love talking about themselves. And the podcast is the best way. And there's no cameras, so you don't have to worry about them getting nervous about being on video. So a couple of tips. Podcasting, there's a lot of work at the start in terms of getting the gear, choosing your seat, like how you want to set up your theme. Do I want to talk about A, B, or C? And a lot of people sort of get bogged down and think, I'll never be able to do it. It seems a bit too technical. I'll never be able to stick to a program. But you see, there's a lot of people who fail with podcasts because they just give up at the start. I'll run through that all. In fact, over 90% of podcasts fail by episode 8. Okay, so whether you're fortnightly, monthly, weekly, you might be 8 weeks in, 2 months in, and most people give up. All right. Now the reason is there's no immediate return on investment. You're not going to switch on a podcast one week and have people knocking at the door the next week. It's not something like that. Facebook ads, Google AdWords, some type of video advertising, that can happen. With podcasting, that's really not going to happen. It's a long-term investment. So that's why most people give up. Lack of return on investment. People get overwhelmed by a schedule. All right? Some people start off thinking they're going to do a daily podcast. I mean, good luck. People do, and they're very successful, but it's a very small minority. Even weekly schedules can be really hard to stick to. So I recommend setting a schedule you're comfortable with, fortnightly, monthly, bi-monthly, but don't get bogged down by something that you feel you can't commit to. People get worried that they're doing a lot of hard work, getting these guests on or putting out their point of view, doing all the links on LinkedIn, but no one's commenting, there's no reviews. And that's normal in podcasting. It takes a while to build your tribe, so don't get too underwhelmed or overwhelmed if you think there's no feedback coming through. And a lot of people worry they're just not good enough, and those last 2 points tying together. They're not getting feedback, and they think, oh, no one's listening. I'm rubbish. I'm not good. Like, you'd be surprised how many people listen and never contact you. And it blows me away when I run into people and they go, oh, listen to that episode. Like, oh, why didn't you tell me? But in our society, and especially on social media, we only want to talk online when things are bad or we want to whinge. It's rare that we give compliments online or we reach out to someone and go, hey, love that, it's really good, but the chances are you did impact someone in that way. So if you do take the time to set up a podcast and get started, I do recommend you see it through. With the Career Development Centre podcast, when we started that nearly 50 episodes ago, we were probably getting 10, 20 listens in the first every week, and we thought, oh, this is a burn. This is so hard. No one's listening. Now we've got nearly 5,000 downloads, and people are actually asking us to come on our podcast. We do a weekly schedule, but as I'll explain in this section, we don't make it a laborious task. So we don't have a guest lined up for that week. We do something called a Friday rant, which is basically we get to the end of the week, we haven't got a guest, what are we going to talk about? All right, let's look through the news, the articles related to mental health or careers training, and let's have a quick 5-minute rant. So what we do is we find normally something which is a bit topical, and we go, right, turn the mics on. Sally, what do you think about this? Tina, what do you think about this? And we just talk for 5 minutes, and then we post it up straight away. It's the Friday 5-minute rant, and that gets us through that week. And actually, they're the most enjoyable. So how can you overcome what is known in the industry as podcast fade? Podcast fade is 8 episodes in, never going to do one again. A lot of people batch record guests in advance. So if you're doing a weekly schedule, a fortnightly schedule, just try and dedicate 2 or 3 days to maybe get 5 or 6 guests in and try and basically record as many as you can in one sitting. That will make your schedule moving forward easier. And your question was, how do you find guests? Well, actually it's really, really simple. People love talking about themselves. So maybe play up to them a little bit when you invite them on. So say, I love the work you do, I know you're an expert in your field. Or if they've given a point of view on something on LinkedIn or Facebook, hey, would you like to come on and elaborate about that on our podcast? We'll put you on, we'll put you out to our members, give your point of view. Not many people knock you back.
And how are you finding them, Patrick? You stalking them on LinkedIn or something? What are you doing?
Oh, most definitely, but it's really industry specific. So,
but you're influencers and entrepreneurs as well, really.
Yeah, so that was actually reaching out on Instagram where the influencers are. So I reached out to get 15 guests on, maybe 2 of them I knew in advance. I reached out to about, I'd say 50 or 60 people on Instagram, and the first 15 that came back, I was booking them in. And actually I got about 20, 25 back, so I had to sort of cut it down. But Instagram was a super simple way for me to do that. So, and then I had to choose the ones that I could get to easy as well.
You have 2 minutes.
2 minutes. All right.
Well, I'll give you 5.
Vary your style if you're going to create a podcast, okay? So do long ones, maybe do short ones, keep it interesting. Do a Thursday, do a Friday, mix it up. Don't aim for perfection. This doesn't have to be radio quality, guys. It just has to be a nice, quiet environment and 2 people having a conversation. Keep an eye on the news for interesting stories. So you're struggling that week to come up with an idea. There's always something in the news. Brexit, Pauline Hanson, something in sports. You'll find something, guaranteed. Record seasons. My first podcast was season 1. So I did 15 people and then I shut it down and I was going to do season 2, which I still am, but I'm busy. So if you want to do a season, that's a different way of thinking. Don't worry if you miss a schedule. If you commit to every Thursday at 6 a.m. and 1 week you can't do it, the wheels aren't going to fall off your podcast if you miss that week. I guarantee you. Just pick yourself back up, do the next week. You're not going to lose a lot of people for that, if any. And play the long game. It's not an immediate impact tool. It takes a little while to build your tribe, but have fun doing it.
Can I just go back to, you do 2 podcasts, you do them weekly or fortnightly?
Weekly is the Career Development Centre, and the Influencers Entrepreneurs podcast, that was every fortnight. I met Tracy at a Brisbane podcast group. She wanted to start a podcast about show horses. Very, very niche. She went in months and months, and we caught up every month at this meeting. She was getting no feedback, it was really a bit of a struggle. Often she was recording international guests, the UK, the US and Asia, so she was getting up at silly o'clock, doing it from her desk. And she showed no immediate return, and she was putting in a lot of work because she was doing it weekly. Then out of the blue, she got invited to the biggest show horse event called Equitana here in Queensland, and she got to podcast live with some of her idols. This is out of the blue, so she never heard from these guys. No one was saying you're doing a good job. All of a sudden they put her on stage with all the gear and said, we want you to podcast our guest. So she was like 6 months in, this was amazing to her. This is like a dream come true. She's now built a strong international Facebook following, thousands of followers online. And she lines up guests from all over the world who now she's backlogged, they want to come on. So my number one tip, be yourself if you create a podcast. Everyone else has already taken it. If you listen to podcasts and you think I want to be that person or copy that style, chances are they're already dominating that. So just try and be yourself. People will warm to you. Be a little bit different in what you talk about, who you get on, but don't try and just copy someone else. And there are massive rewards. You get to create engaging material, build relationships, loyal followers, so they choose to follow you. It's a very cost-effective platform once you buy the material, all the equipment at the start. It's on-demand content, so it's portable marketing. So just remember, people could be working out in the gym and listening to your podcast. How cool is that? And you get to be seen as an expert in your industry. If you keep it specific to what you love, your passion, people will start to recognise you as an expert. Some podcasters attract sponsors. Not all. Not many, actually. Some. Don't expect that unless you get really big. And my golden nugget, find a client that you really admire or you want to do business with and ask them to come on. You'd be surprised how easy that opens the doors. You create a bond, there's potential for you to do business with them in the future. And remember, make it a hobby, not a chore. If it gets to a chore stage, podcasting might not be for you. You should wake up sort of every week, every fortnight, once a month, and really look forward to doing your podcast. If it's becoming too hard, it's probably not going to last. And that's it. Any questions?